Well, the United States was a very young country. It is a very young country. So when the Europeans first settled in the United States, they came with their own art and architecture. Now, for a church, they came with their own religion. So they wanted, the only real thing they knew was what their churches looked like in Europe. So you come from Italy, you want your church to look like an Italian church. You come from Ireland, you want your church to look like a British or an Irish church. If you came from Spain, you wanted your building to look like Spanish churches. So this church, it didn't start out as a cathedral. It was a regular church. Paterson at the time was a very, very wealthy city. It was actually started, interestingly enough, not many people know this, it was started by Alexander Hamilton. Alexander Hamilton, of course, you know, started the Bank of New York. And he financed all of the factories in Paterson because of the waterfalls. There's the Great Falls in Paterson, and it was pneumatic water power, okay? And so he financed all of the industry in Paterson. And Paterson became a very wealthy city because of all the mills, okay? So what they did was that because they had a lot of money, they wanted to build a very grand church. They built the church, not the cathedral, but the church of St. John the Baptist. Okay. So the first immigrants in Paterson, Roman Catholic immigrants, after the American Civil War, the American Revolutionary War, of course, the American Revolutionary War was separation from England. There was no such thing as the Roman Catholic Church in the United States until after the American Revolution, because the Church of England didn't like the Roman Catholic Church. So they started the church, originally in Baltimore, and then the churches started to grow in other parts of the country. But the Irish immigrants were the ones who settled in the Northeast, Boston, Philadelphia, and in New Jersey. So they built a style of church that they wanted, that they remembered from their homeland. Now, this is where it gets interesting. The bishop of, the last bishop, most recent bishop of the church in Paterson, now the Cathedral of St. John of St. John of the Baptist, was the first Italian-American bishop of that cathedral. And he said, I want all Italian stone. And he says, well, okay, it has to be Gothic, and Gothic really isn't Italian unless you go to Milano. And his parents were from Campania. So he said, okay, as long as you get Italian stone, I'll get Italian stone that looks like Gothic architecture. So this is how historic architecture began in the United States. It was copying European styles. And the restoration of that architecture is more popular now because as a young country, everybody wants something new. So just like the new architecture after World War II, from the Bauhaus, what was called the International style and so forth, the trends, the art and architecture trends in the United States wanted, once again, European architecture, which was now modern. So all of a sudden, traditional churches were out of fashion, and they began to fall apart, and newer churches were built, okay? And then they renovated this church in 1987, and they took out all the old architecture on the interior, and they modernized it, and this bishop, Bishop Serratelli, Arturo Serratelli, said, I want to bring back the old, just like the first immigrants had. They might not have been Italian, but I'm Italian, and I want all Italian stone. And he says, find me Italian stone and a great Italian fabricator, and I came to Girardi.